Currently, the poultry feeds in the market are really high, and we end up finding out that even if you are trying to formulate your own feeds, you end up finding out that the price of the feeds may tend to become high. The only problem is that if you're using the concentrate, the one that I usually told or talked in most of my videos, whereby I usually talked about the poultry feed that usually constitutes of the concentrate that is 20%, you end up finding out that when you're trying to formulate your feed, you find out that it is a bit expensive. In today's video, I will talk about another kind of concentrate that you can be able to use as an alternative to the 20%, so as you can be able to save money on the poultry feeds. Maize, currently in our Kenyan market, it is almost double the price of what was retailing when I first made the other video. When I made that video, the cost of one bag, that is a 90 kg bag, it was retailing at an amount of around 2,600 Kenyan shillings. Currently, the cost of one bag is around 5,400 Kenyan shillings, meaning the price of the maize has been able to double. If you're making poultry feeds, you have to be able to save money. And if you're using the concentrate that I usually talked about, the one that is 20%, then you'll be able to only save a little amount of money. In this video, I'll be able to explain to you about the 10% concentrate. I only talked about the 20%, but I want to explain to you about the 10% concentrate, so as it can enable you to be able to save money. Okay? And you can only be able to save money if you already purchased the maize. Okay? And you know the benefit of you making the poultry feeds by the use of the 10% concentrate is that you'll end up finding out that you are using less concentrate and yet you are making a lot of feed. What do I mean when I say that? For every one bag, that is a 50 kg bag of a concentrate, the 10% one, you can be able to make up to 500 kgs of feed or even more. But the only disadvantage comes in on the price of the maize. But this is also an alternative for those people or those farmers that already have the maize on their farm. If you already have the maize on your farm, or you want to be able to purchase maize whereby you have gotten it at a cheaper price, then it will make a lot of sense on your part. And this will come to whereby you find farmers, they usually say that they usually have this kind of mixture, whereby they say they have soybean and also they have the sunflower cake. So if you have the sunflower cake and you have the soybean, then you can be able to use the concentrate that is 10%. And for the benefit of you using this concentrate, for example, on the grower stage, you'll end up finding out that you will be able to use the wheat bran. Wheat bran is highly discouraged when you're making or formulating poultry feeds. But due to it having a very low demand on it being consumed by those animal feed manufacturers, you end up finding out that the price of it is a bit affordable. So how can you be able to make poultry feed by the use of the 10% concentrate? By the 10% concentrate, you can be able to add the wheat bran in it or the wheat pollard in the formulating of the feeds. And this you can be able to feed your chicken from 13 weeks of age up to the point of lay. Or can I say just the grower stage? If you are able to want to feed your chicken during the grower stage, you can decide and use that 10% concentrate so as you can be able to feed your chicken. In any kind of farming, you have to be able to know how you'll be able to save on feeds. Because in this, when you're using that 10% concentrate, you'll end up finding out that the most of the thing that will be used in the making or the formulating of that feed is around can I say 320 to 330 kgs will be of the whole maize. So if you have already planted your maize or you have maize in stock, instead of you using the layer concentrate that is 20% in formulating of feeds for the grower stage of your birds, you can decide to use the concentrate that is 10%. The 20% concentrate, the only disadvantage is that it has all the things, so you won't be able to use or utilize in case you have the soybean or the sunflower cake. But if you're using this 10% concentrate, then you will have to be able to utilize your soybean and also you'll be able to utilize your sunflower cake. The only disadvantage here is that for the people that are usually buying the soybean meal, you end up finding out that farmers usually try to roast their soybean. When they roast their soybean, they end up roasting their soybean to be half-baked. If you decide to roast your soybean and it is half-baked, This will mean that you'll end up finding out that your chicken may have a problem with their pancreas, because you may think that you have roasted your soybean to a perfect way of how you can be able to roast the soybean so as it can be consumed by the body of the chicken, but you have decided and you have roasted the soybean and it is half baked, so it won't be able to be utilized well by the body of the chicken yet, and instead it will have a negative impact on your birds. We don't want that to happen on our birds. The most important thing here we want is to be able to save money and also be able to make our chicken grow and not let them die. So in case you are doing any kind of poultry farming, you have to make sure that if you are making your poultry feeds and you're using the soybean, you have to make sure that you have roasted your soybean properly. If it is half baked, it won't be able to help your chicken and it can have negative impacts on your birds. That's why I insisted on new farmers making poultry feeds by the use of a 20% concentrate, because it already exists with the soybean. So the protein content of the 10% concentrate is a bit on the lower side. That's why we have to be able to add the sunflower cake and also be able to add the soybean cake, the soybean meal in it. So if you are making this kind of feed, you have to make sure that you are using soybean meal that is fully roasted and is roasted properly so as it doesn't affect the pancreas of the chicken, hence leading to mortalities on your poultry farm. We don't want you to end up trying to make feed thinking that you're saving money, then you end up losing the birds. How would we have helped you? So in case you can't be able to roast your soybean properly, you can end up purchasing. There are these Juakali artisans here in Kenya whereby you can decide and they will be able to sell to you the soybean roaster. If you have the soybean roaster, then you can be able to roast your soybean properly until they are fully baked. We want to be able to roast soybean that are fully baked so as it doesn't affect our chicken. As I've said, you end up finding out that this concentrate of 10% ends up consuming around 10%. Around the maize ends up consuming around 330 kgs out of their half a ton. So you end up finding out that if you have the maize or during the harvest season of the maize, you end up finding out that, for example, for the bag of the growers mash, which costs around 3,200 or 3,150 here in Kenya, you'll end up making it at around 2,000 Kenyan shillings. So if only is during the time of harvest, it is best fit for you to use the concentrate that I have said over here, the 10% concentrate. But let me just put a disclaimer over here. For the wheat bran and the wheat pollard, I know I'm all over the place on this video. On the wheat pollard and the wheat bran, if you're making the feed for your chicken, make sure you're only feeding the wheat bran or the wheat pollard during the growth stage of your birds. Don't end up feeding your birds with the wheat bran or the wheat pollard during the laying season. This will affect the productivity on your poultry farm, and it won't help you. It won't help your birds reach the peak of their performance. We want to be able to save money on the making of the poultry feeds, and we also want to be able to have a high productivity on our poultry farm. The main reason that I talked about the 20% is that you end up finding out that you can be able to use the maize germ, which is a bit, you can use it higher, or the maize bran. You can use it in huge numbers and also have an average on the maize, so as you can be able to save on the cost of production. But the best concentrate that you can use during the harvest season is the 10% concentrate. But the only disadvantage here is that you have to be able to have sunflower cake and soybean meal. The soybean meal and sunflower cake is not in a huge amount, because if you are making, like, for example, the only thing that I think that is a bit that will come up a bit is the sunflower cake, because if you are making that one, like for 500 kgs, you'll need sunflower cake around 40 kgs, but for the soybean you'll need only around 20 kgs. So it's a bit low on the lower side, but you know, you have to be able to contact me so as I can be able to give you a detailed guide of how you can be able to formulate your own feeds here, or maybe I'll be able to put it in my masterclass, but here I'll only give you the snippets and the things that you can be able to go on your own, then you can be able to do the research on it, so as it can also help you to get money in the venture. We want you to be able to save money. You know, in any kind of business, if you're saving money, then you're growing very well. And why am I telling you guys that don't use the wheat bran or the wheat pollard on the laying hens? Is that we found out during our research, we found out that when the wheat is ingested by the body of the chicken, you end up finding out that it tries and scrapes the wallings of whereby the chicken should be able to lay the eggs properly. So you end up finding out that your chicken may have a lot of complications in the long run. Maybe you can have whereby you have a consistent and prolonged something known as prolapse vent. And prolapse vent is whereby you find out that the lining of whereby the egg usually comes out, usually instead of you sticking in the body of the chicken, you end up finding out that it comes and sticks outside the body of the chicken. So when something like this happens to your birds, you end up finding out that the chicken can start this kind of behavior that is not really tolerated and can lead to a lot of losses on your poultry farm. And what kind of behavior am I talking about? There is this kind of behavior is known as cannibalism. If you haven't debeaked your chicken, you end up finding out that some birds will start pecking on the red prolapse that has come out from the body of the chicken, and that is usually mostly caused by the feed during the grower stage. So when you are making your feeds during the grower stage, you have decided that you are going to use the wheat bran and the wheat pollard in the formulation of the feed. If you have an alternative whereby you can decide and use the maize germ or the maize bran in the formulation of the feed, but I usually insist on the use of the maize germ. So if you end up using the maize germ in the formulating of the feeds, then you'll be able to prevent such cases from occurring on your poultry farm. Because if your birds end up getting that prolapse vent, you'll end up finding out that it has encouraged the cannibalism on your poultry farm. And if cannibalism is encouraged on your poultry farm, you end up finding out that this chicken decide to peck on those other chicken that have the prolapse vent, because you know the prolapse vent, when it comes outside, it's reddish, and we know chicken are usually attracted to very bright colors, and that's why even on my poultry farm you can end up finding out that I have used the feeders as yellow and the drinkers as red, because the chicken are usually attracted to very bright colors. So when you end up finding out that such a case has occurred on your poultry farm and there's a lot of prolapse vent, then you'll end up losing a lot of birds to cannibalism. You must know that if you lose one bird, that is a lot of eggs that you have lost. Because if a bird has to lay around 500 eggs in its lifetime, and the prolapse vent usually starts to occur after your chicken have laid like around 7 to 8 months of age, then you end up finding out that you have been able to lose almost a year of production from that single hen. Almost 250 eggs from that single hen. So, for example, if you have decided and lost 4 chicken, and that's why I usually say my consultation is so important to you, because you may think or you may see it the way you want to see it, but it may help you in the long run, because there are some things that you can help you to be able to avoid. But you know, some people usually pretend that they are so index one, they are so smart, they want to do things their own way, then they want to use people in the wrong manner. Okay? So you just have to make your decisions. You can decide to make your decision and align yourself with the right people, or you can decide and do other things the way you want to do them. I can help you up to a certain point, and I also have to be able to see if you're benefiting from me, because for anything that you usually get for free, you don't usually take it like seriously, but so something that you have paid for, then you usually take it seriously. That's why when you go to school, you have to pay for school fees, and when you are in school, you usually take it very seriously. But if it's just something, maybe they have been called for a seminar somewhere and you're not paying anything, usually just take it as a joke. Only a few may take it very seriously. So that's why I usually say my time is very, very valuable, and you have to be able to understand that my time is valuable, so as I can be able to also leave my things and be able to engage to you. And I also want to be able to engage with serious lads and not just jokers. So that's how you'll be able to save money on the poultry feed formulation. Because if you just decide to purchase the feeds, then you may have some late production on your poultry farm. And I've said, like for our birds, for the feeds that we'll start to make, we'll be able to make our birds be able to lay at 19 weeks of age. You know, the earlier they start, the better. The earlier they start, the better recoup or return on investment that you have invested in the poultry business. So for our birds, we are still doing the testing phase, whereby we'll be able to formulate feeds that are tailored to these chicken. In this market, you end up finding out that there is feed for kienyeji mash. You end up finding there is feed for layer smash, but there is no feed for the improved kienyeji breed of chicken. This chicken, they are saying that they are kienyeji, but they are crossbreed between the kienyeji and the exotic breed. So you have to be able to also come up with a kind of feed that is suitable for this kind of breed. And that's what we are doing here on the actuary farms. As I said, you have to be able to contact me so as I can also help you to grow your venture. Don't be left behind. Serious lads, like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get this video to 100 likes, and let's make serious people millionaires and billionaires in the poultry farming sector. Don't be left behind. Money starts with you, and seriousness is all about your mindset and also the wealthy part of it. See you in the next one.